No.
Hi, and welcome to Spiritual Alchemy Energy, the podcast with Julie. Tonight I have Christy Holt, happiness coach. Christy Holt, thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
Sweet. Okay. Before we get into things, tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about what you do, not too much in detail, so we
Okay.
have I know we have all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Um, and then we'll go into another question after that.
Okay. So I'll give you just the sort of like high level right now what I'm kind of really excitedly working on, and that is my podcast. I rebranded in 2021 to happiness coach. Prior to that, I was kind of health coach, mindset coach, and it was sort of evolving as I was growing. And I really felt that it was time to just shift and really like step into a new kind of brand for myself. And what I'm really passionate about is helping people to create their happy. And so the happiness coach just really felt right to me. So rebranded to happiness coach. And then this year, I actually launched my podcast, which is called Create Your Happy. And it's all about inspiring stories of overcoming in life, relationship, and business. And the podcast is for conscious women to, just be empowered to find their voice and change the world one beautiful soul at a time. So, yeah, that's what I'm kind of up to these days.
Awesome, awesome. And congratulations on the new podcast here.
Yeah, it's so fun. I love having these conversations, and it's just been such an awesome variety of topics and amazing people literally from the entire worldwide, and it's just been an absolute blast.
Awesome. I know the feeling. I
Yeah.
do. I do. I mean, I kind of like talked to you about my podcast, so it is up and down, and it's like, oh well, that pod that you go back and you go, oh wow, that was a really good podcast. There's
I
some that just resonate with you.
Oh man, I have a few episodes and I just got really excited about it, and I just launched in the middle of April, so it's really quite brand new. It's only a few weeks old here. So I've released episode number 7 this week, but I've recorded I believe 17 or 18. I have a few that I haven't edited, so I'm not totally sure where I'm at. But I'm talking about like enough to release into about August at this point. And there are some that I am just dying to put out because they were so good. And I just felt so excited about that topic and what we talked about. I can't wait. I can barely contain myself waiting until I can release them when it's their time.
So you can birth your babies out there.
Yeah.
Um, so one thing, um, you're a happiness coach. So a few years ago, when I had a life change, let's put it that way,
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out. I was asking myself the question: what makes you happy? What makes you happy? What's going to make you happy? So, sometimes you ask people and they'll spout out something, but then is that really what makes them happy?
Yeah. I mean, there's a bit to wade through sometimes, isn't there? Because sometimes what we tell people will make us happy is actually sort of built on a foundation of expectation and should and making other people happy instead of taking the time to go inward and figure out what it is that our heart really desires. So sometimes we need to strip away, and get a little bit curious about the beliefs that we're holding, the emotions that we're holding in our body from past experiences, our memories, um, our identity even as a whole, kind of just strip some of that away so that we can figure out who really we are and then what it is that really we want to do. And I think, to me, I would define happiness as sort of a conscious choice to look at things from a positive light, realize that things are always working out for you. Those shitty days, those icky feelings, they will pass. things always kind of, come round, and there's a lesson usually involved. And I know it sucks when you're going through it. It's really uncomfortable sometimes dealing with challenges in life. But if you kind of stick with it, there is usually a sort of hidden gem that reveals itself later on. Sometimes a lot later on. I know for me, I've had a few things I'm like, what the heck? And I didn't quite understand until sometime later. I thought, oh, I see now. That is what led me here to this place. And I generally think, as much as we can look back at our past and think, oh, I wish I would have maybe done something differently. Ultimately, I feel like I don't have any regrets, because if I were to regret the things that happened in my past, I wouldn't be who I am today, and I wouldn't be living this life where I am today. And I'm so grateful. So I think happiness is sort of, an intention, a choice, an action to seek out what's good, even in the mundane or, maybe more challenging scenarios.
Okay, I'm sure you probably don't have these types of people that come to you that they've got just a really shitty attitude. And I mean, they're probably not your clients because they're probably not looking to change,
They're probably triggered AF by me.
right? So, and they're like, everything sucks. I hate my job. The house sucks.
Yeah.
You probably don't have those clients, but so you have clients that come to you that are like past that attitude stage. How
Yeah.
how do you identify? How do you help them identify what's going to make them happy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a process. It's a bit of a journey of going inward. I think ultimately, sort of the first step is awareness, right? Just awareness of who you are. And that involves some of that stripping away, some taking a closer look at the beliefs that we're carrying, and whether are they helping us move forward? Are they actually holding us back? Can we shift them or reframe them? Is there some emotional stuff that we're hanging on to? One of the tools that I really love using with my clients, like I kind of coin it the spiral stopper, because ultimately it's a form of regulating your nervous system so that you can actually be the observer of what's going on, instead of, acting from that flight or fight response, acting out of, that survival mode that typically, our brain is designed to keep us safe. So brain response initially to most scenarios is a response based on past experience and perceived, fear and lack of safety. And so we end up in this sort of like, this fight or flight or freeze or fawn. But it's not an intentional response. What we want to do is be able to work through that, regulate our nervous system so that we can just exist through that survival initial response, and actually wait until our brain comes on, full force, rational thinking, where we can actually formulate an intentional response instead of just a reaction. So I think that awareness, the strategies for bringing that nervous system under control, and then being really intentional can help us to release what's not serving us and bring in more of those elevated emotions and experiences that we truly want.
So, what are some of those strategies? The breathing method, like breathing work or breath
Yeah,
work, tapping, journaling.
you got it. All of those kinds of things. There's a ton of them out there. And I work with my clients because everyone is very different. So when I work with my clients, I have them help me. I mean, I've got a list of tools that I know I've used, but it's not about me, it's about my clients. So we are going to work together, and we're going to find a list of things. And absolutely, I'll teach them the ones. If they haven't heard of EFT, let's talk about EFT. If you haven't heard about meditation, or that's not something that's worked for you, let's trial it. Maybe you've never tried Ho'oponopono and you're ready to give that a try. Maybe it's just, one of my favorite ones is just just shake it out. Like, all we need to do is interrupt the pattern. So we're not looking at building some giant thing. We're just practicing overcoming that initial nervous system response that's not helping us move forward in a healthy and productive way.
So, when clients come to you, are they already aware of the pattern and the cause of what's going on?
I would say they are not totally aware necessarily that there's a pattern, but they do know that there's some shit going down that's not really working for them, right?
Right.
And they're feeling internally like something's got to change because, maybe they're trying to get healthy, and yet every single time they try, they just end up reverting back to old habits. Maybe they decide, I'm going to start getting up early and have a better morning routine, yet that snooze button just keeps calling and they just can't break out of it. So maybe on some level, they're a bit aware that there's something that's kind of tripping them up. I'm not sure. I'd say like 50-50, that people are aware that there's something there and they're able to sort of, detach themselves from that pattern and recognize it as a pattern. The other half probably are just repeating the pattern and thinking like, oh my God, like I'm never going to change. I can't do it. It's too hard. Right. So that's where you kind of get stuck in that loop and you're just repeating it like Groundhog Day.
And there's drama and
And,
there can be.
ultimately, you're right, because our brain is designed to keep us safe. And what does our brain think is safe is familiar, right? Anything that is outside of familiar feels uncomfortable. And our brain, just the way it works, especially when we're triggered at the beginning of an emotional response, is to keep us protected and safe and inside of our comfort zone. Doesn't matter if our comfort zone is actually really awful. Maybe it's really chaotic or really toxic. Doesn't really matter from that initial brain perspective. We're not logically thinking. We're not using full brain online. We are doing survival mode thinking at this point, unless we're really intentional at breaking past that, working through that, and then bringing our whole brain online for, a little bit better functioning.
Wow. So you do all kinds of work and like NLP. What's the neuroscience?
You know what? I just think it's really interesting. I am by no means a neuroscience expert, but that's basically just the science of how our brain works. And I just find it incredibly interesting. I love to read. I love to explore. I love to learn about, and not like, I'm not reading scientific journals. Okay. I'm not a scientist. I am very much just an everyday normal kind of person who just is incredibly interested by this, because I actually think it's so fascinating to me that neuroscience and the evidence of how our brains function is really providing a lot of proof about things that people really once thought were very spiritual. And so I think that there's some of that element of the woo woo that's actually really being more and more proven by science. And I think that's really freaking cool.
I know, me too. Can't wait. I'll have like meters and tests. It's like, oh well, it's just your energy. You're connected this way.
Yeah. And it's interesting, how they're able to see that, and how, as we're learning more now, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that they thought our brains stopped developing, when we hit adulthood, and that was that, and that you couldn't change. But the science is really showing that we absolutely freaking can change for our entire life. We have neuroplasticity. And if we are intentional, we can actually rewire those neural pathways and create those new habits. It's not always easy, right? But it's possible. And so if we just put some of that effort in and, do the things so that we can interrupt the patterns, we can rewrite new ones and really make massive transformation in our lives. And I think that's super cool. Quantum physics is like mind-blowingly interesting as well. I can't even really explain all of that, but it's so interesting how, ultimately we're all energy and we're all part of the same universal energy. We're actually not even technically solid humans. We are actually a bunch of energy particles with a large amount of space between it, which is just really hard to wrap your mind around, because it feels like I feel like I'm touching something, right? But ultimately we're not actually coming into contact with anything physical. It's just energy. And that's pretty interesting.
That's where I'm at in my book. That's my next
Yeah.
subject I'm writing on is I've already gotten it
Yeah.
written. So you might want to read my book.
I for sure do.
It's so yeah, energy. Wow, wow, wow. That I mean, you could just keep talking about energy and like not be done.
Yeah. I mean, we could go on and on and on.
They're just yeah. And our beliefs are energy. So
Everything about our existence. And ultimately, we are, in effect, sort of like a giant magnet that attracts more of that like energy to us. So ultimately, if we want to attract more happiness, more of those elevated emotions into our life, we have to put that out, right? So, how do we put that out? We think it, we feel it, we embody it with intention, and then actually end up attracting more of that back into our lives. We want to have more things to be grateful for. We practice gratitude, and the more that we're grateful for what we have, the more abundance we attract to us. If we practice complaining and negative attitudes, well, guess what? We're going to have more things to complain about. And that's the law of attraction,
right,
which a lot of people think is very woo woo on the surface, but ultimately it's just that energy exchange and that energy moving around. And again, the science is really proving that we are magnetic. Right, we
right,
have this magnetic pull. And so it's not just woo woo spiritual stuff, it's science. And also, our brain is designed to see more of what it is we're focused on, right? Everybody uses the analogy of, like, you buy a new car, and before you bought that car, you never saw that many of that car. But as soon as you buy it, you see that car everywhere because you're looking for it. And it's interesting because ultimately, what we seek, we find. And in that way, law of attraction or otherwise, we're really creating, our reality by our thoughts and our perception of reality. So it's kind of feels woo woo, but it's really not.
it's just nature.
It's just the way it is. It's cool science. And like, human beings are awesome. And we have these really intricate systems of functioning that just don't make sense necessarily to our limited ability and capacity to understand. But science is showing us more and more of this. And I think it's super cool.
It sounds like you've gotten more woo woo over the last few months.
I don't know. I just think it's all science, really.
It's really cool. So underneath all of that, I kind of feel like you have some sort of program that you work with your clients where you're working on mindset, where you're integrating and you're grounding that into them.
Yeah.
I really feel like you got something that what do you do? What's your secret?
Well, I can't give you all the secrets here. I don't even have time for that. It's really like a 1-hour call. Ultimately, I really feel like the biggest part of what I do with my clients is honestly holding space for them to explore those deeper parts of themselves. Because at the end of the day, we often can't see our own stuff. Like, it's just harder for us to see our own stuff. And it's harder for us to ask the questions because our brain is, again, like, kind of blocking us in a way to keep us safe and comfortable in our little safe, comfortable zone. And so if we start kind of trying to go outside of that, often on our own, we kind of just end up shutting ourselves back down. So sometimes we need a little bit of a push, a little bit of guidance, someone just to ask the questions that our brain is actually not going to ask us because it's unsafe to do so, and to just really explore, what does that mean? And I think a lot of times a great deal of our challenges in life come from the meanings we're attaching, the perception of the situation, not the facts, right?
Right.
But how we are interpreting that, the assumptions we're coming into it with, right? And this is subconscious level kind of stuff. Often we can be completely unaware of that. And if we don't get in that habit of breaking that pattern, we won't have an opportunity to see it. So we've really kind of got to get that nervous system regulated and online, feel grounded. I personally love meditation, but I also, I do some tapping, I do breathing, exercise is great, lots of other things. Sex is great. Lots of like, just things to get you really present in the moment. Nature. I love hiking, and actually, my partner and I, we love to go hiking in the mountains, and we go camping, and oh my gosh, I'm so excited. If it would just warm up here. We're
Where?
supposed to go next weekend. I'm in Alberta in Canada.
Edmonton?
Edmonton, yeah. And so we had planned, actually, I'm not totally sure. We planned to go either, somewhere in the Rocky Mountains, obviously, either sort of south in Kananaskis country or in Nordegg, if anybody's listening and knows where the hell I'm talking about at all. Anyways, in the mountains, we were thinking about going next weekend, but it looks like a lot of like rain and not very warm. So we're going to play it by ear. Maybe just get out for a day hike or something if that's the case, because I am tired and over being cold. It's been months of cold, and I'm ready to be overheated and hot, sunburnt.
Right? Not windburnt, not frostbitten.
Not like having to like warm up my fingers.
So, well, I can't say what's common in mine because I just like everybody that I work with is different. And
yeah. And I mean, ultimately that's the nature of it. And, like I say, by providing that sort of safe space for them to, it's really, I'm not doing the things for them. I'm just sort of helping them to unpack, to see what is lying under the surface, what they might be missing. I usually just tell my clients, like, well, how we're going to start this is I'm going to ask you about 10,000 questions. We're going to get that nervous system regulated so that you're in a space of, safe, calm space where you're feeling open and willing to do the work, to do those deeper questions. And then, I'm going to provide that safe space. We're going to go there. We're going to ask some difficult questions. We're going to just see what comes up. And then it's kind of a journey along the way, right? So figuring out what those things are and, regulating so that we can address them in a productive way, put in new patterns into play, rewire some of those neural pathways, redefine happy for ourselves, redefine where we want to go and what we want to do, get the beliefs that are going to help us get there.
Yeah.
Get those ones ingrained, right? So that we're feeling confident, we're feeling clear, we're feeling like we can do it.
We're talking about reprogramming, basically.
Yeah. And I think ultimately, that reprogramming comes in layers, and it's not just a one and done, and it's not just a one size fits all. It's a very personal sort of journeys. So I typically, work with my clients for a few months to kind of process through that. And I have had clients say, somewhere around, say, week 10 together, they have a massive breakthrough that's been building. And I had one client say something to the effect of like, oh, like, why couldn't we have started there at the beginning? Well, of course that would have been great. But like that was just, it's all in divine timing. Things always work out, one step at a time, and things are revealed when you're ready to face them. So processing, reframing, I think a big part of it is stopping that thought spiral so that you can reframe it, remove the meanings and those backstories, because that keeps us living in the past. And then if we have, on the flip side, anxious thoughts or things that are worrisome, fear coming up a lot, we can sort of release those and get more present, because those aren't serving us either, because worry is just like guaranteeing you're suffering, right? Mm-hmm. And that really makes it hard to stay happy and stay in the moment. And ultimately all we have is this moment right here, right now.
Right.
And tomorrow, when we're living in whatever moment, that's what we're all only going to have. We can't go back. We can't go forward. All we can do is make those choices and stay as present as we can.
Oh, but we have quantum physics to go back, and for.
Yes. But ultimately, yeah, I know.
I'm
Now you're
sorry.
making me,
I
like,
just threw
really
a monkey wrench
confused.
in that.
Yeah, I mean, we can sort of reframe it. We can reframe it, right? But we have just this moment right here. And yeah, that whole construct of time is like really complicated and confusing about how we're ultimately in all the times at all at once. But you know, by staying grounded in this moment, that's where we really have our power in this moment, right?
Yeah. I sound really convincing, huh? But I got issues, so you'll read my book, you'll understand it more.
Okay. All right.
Um, oh gosh,
Have you mastered time travel?
not yet.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought maybe you mastered time travel because, like, I would really, you know, if we could
Not
do that, like maybe we could also master traveling across the world. Like what is that called? Oh, it's
teleporting.
yeah, teleporting.
Well, I discovered I write in this book, and I discovered I knew I had two lifetimes that existed at the same time.
Hmm.
And as I was writing, I'm like, oh, well, here's a third one.
Oh,
So that was interesting. It's really hard to wrap your mind around your soul existing in three different bodies in the same timeline.
yeah. Yeah, that's complex.
I mean, and you don't even look alike. You're not doppelgangers or anything.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, how do you deal with stress through this? I'm sure I mean, if you're working with people in business, they've got families and whatnot, they're coming to you and they're a bit stressed.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like bringing all of these pieces together and just finding what works for my clients. And that's going to be different for everyone. So, taking care of your body, good health, fitness, nutrition, and movement really play into your overall health. Balancing that with your mind, those beliefs, the mindsets that you have, and then finding those things that really make you feel cared for on a full, deep soul level. So, you know, finding
Self-
something to be passionate about. And self-care. I'm not talking about pedicures and, going shopping. I'm talking about what do you need inside to feel fulfilled and alive and, like you are here for some kind of reason to make a difference, right? And ultimately, I think for most people, that comes down to making an impact in the world, maybe sharing something that they have learned about the world or about themselves in a way that can be helpful to other people that are currently undergoing similar experiences. And I know that's really what brought me, to this point in my journey is going through a really difficult divorce where, prior to that, I spent way too many years kind of just being unhappy and, yeah, playing the victim mentality, victim card, waiting for him to change or circumstances to change or the kids to grow up or just waiting for something that wasn't me to do the thing, right? Just lots of excuses. I was really good at like complaining. What I wasn't really doing was taking responsibility for my part of it. I mean, I probably was to an extent, but not to the full extent. And ultimately, I lacked some boundaries. I lacked some self-worth, and that's my fault, right? That's me. That's not someone else's responsibility, and it's so easy to want to pass that off and say that I'll be happy when blah 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 this person does the thing I want, or I have this thing, or I make more money, or whatever we're waiting for. But that's giving away our power in the moment to create that from within. And that's our superpower. We can actually completely create that unconditional love that we have. And if, I'm sure your listeners are in general spiritual. So, we have that unconditional love from universe, God, spirit, universal energy, however you want to, refer to it. we have that within us. That's our superpower because we're all connected. We're all this energy and we have it within us. So we need to stop looking out there. We need to start looking in here because it is already there. We just need to, be able to harness that.
Yeah, that's a big one. Taking responsibility for yourself.
Yeah.
It's huge. You're not the only one. It's very, very it's like prolific out there.
Yeah.
So
Well, and it's because of that fear response. And ultimately, what I'm kind of on a mission right now is to really help some people that are kind of in that place where I was, a little bit stuck, know they're unhappy, know that like, should I leave? Should I stay? I don't know. Just freaking terrified of making the wrong decision. So staying stuck because the uncertainty just has that fear and it just blocks us from moving forward. It feels overwhelming, impossible, terrifying, just keeps you feeling completely stuck and helpless. That's how I felt until I started to take responsibility for my shit, right? Take responsibility for, not waiting for someone else to love me, but to be like, I am amazing. I love me, right? Need to get to that place of I love me. Because when you can harness all of that love, then you have this abundance of this elevated emotion, love, peace, joy, all of these things within you. And guess what? It overflows to everyone around you. And then you're able to, lift other people up. You're able to encourage them. You're able to hold space for them. And that's, I think, ultimately how I can hold space for my clients, even if they're going through heavy stuff. I've been able to create my own boundaries where energetically I'm not taking on their stuff. And this took some practice because I was definitely taking on the stuff in my past relationship, creating those boundaries to protect my energy and keeping the responsibility to my responsibilities and not taking on other people's stuff as well, right? So it's kind of a protection both ways. I'm not taking on other people's stuff. I will hold space for them. I will help them process and work through it. And at the end of the day, I'm not taking it on and I'm helping them release it so that it can just, be released and we can be grounded and happy and productive moving forward in a better and more healthy way.
And you're attracting as well. You're not just putting that out. You're attracting that energy as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just back to the law of attraction, like we were talking about before.
Oh boy. Yeah. I'm like out of questions. Well, what was this catalyst? I mean, I know, that first relationship with the ex-husband and all of that, that was one of the catalysts, but I'm sure that there were other pieces going on. Not just you taking responsibility for yourself, but there's other factors that go into things, like what society tells us and parents, upbringing.
There's so much of that. And okay, like there's a ton of pieces coming into that. I would say like perhaps the biggest catalyst in that was my kids, because for so long I was sort of bumbling along and I was fully immersed in sort of this martyrdom, mom martyr, put everyone else first. I was avoiding everything. I was training for marathons and I was running and I was teaching fitness classes and I was, doing ladies group and I was just doing a million things, really freaking social. And actually it's ironic. This is total sidebar, but COVID really forced me to take a step back and I realized I'm not actually the extroverted social butterfly that I thought I was. And that energy that I felt like I was getting from that situation was absolutely not mine. And it was causing me to crash and burn and just live in a perpetual state of burnout. Okay, back to the thing at hand. I was in this completely feeling like I would, if it was best for my kids, continue to be the buffer and the protector and the mediator and sort of like just kind of do whatever I freaking had to hold it together if that was what was going to be best for my kids. And of course, we have this distorted version of what's best for our kids because safety and uncertainty, and we don't know what lies beyond making a change. So I thought, oh, I'll just stay. Maybe I can just stay until they're grown up. But there came a time where it became really clear, and I don't know, even how to pinpoint it, but I just all of a sudden knew. I was like, I have to leave for them. I can't stay and let them think this is the picture of perfection. And ultimately, it wasn't terribly abusive or, anything like that. There was maybe some lots of conflict and stuff for the most part. And it was just nobody was happy. So it doesn't even, if you're listening, you're like, well, it's not that bad. Oh my God, that's the same kind of shit that I said. It's not that bad. I'd talked to other friends, and again, back to this programming, I had other friends. We would commiserate. Marriage is hard, right? And then in the church, I was part of a Christian church community at the time. And it's just marriage is really difficult. And like, you should just pray harder and put out more. And like this kind of advice that was actually completely impractical given the situation where it really wasn't healthy and it really wasn't working for either of us. And I actually really think that the best thing for both of us was for us to go separate ways. I am immensely happy now. I found the most amazing partner, and I am so grateful that I made that decision, kind of triggered by my kids just thinking, oh, like what would be a really bad case scenario would be that my kids grew up and created this kind of relationship for themselves because they thought it was normal or healthy or good or familiar. Oh my gosh. And I was just like, this realization came to me and I was like, oh, hell no. No. Mm-mm. I got to get my shit together. And because kids don't listen to what we're saying, we really have to lead by example, not just the words, but showing them, because they're like, yeah, words, psh, not listening. You don't get me, right? There's like, but if they can watch and we can be that role model in their life and set that example time after time after time to create that safe and loving environment, to lead by example as often as we can. That's how we can help them to go in those ways, in those healthy patterns, and to break free of, whatever other stuff. And everybody's got some trauma. We do not, escape the room pretty much without having some trauma. It looks different for everyone, but the best thing we can do is to face it, because the more we try and avoid it and stuff it and ignore it, the bigger it gets, the louder it gets, the more involved, our whole body is hanging on to that. And the less healthy we are, it can manifest in physical symptoms where we're actually physically ill. It can result in mental health issues, which is obviously a huge problem right now with COVID and a lot of this uncertainty in living in survival mode with high stress constantly has a lot of people, living inside that fear response, that survival mode. And they're not getting to that part of thriving in their life. They're not getting to that part of being the creator of their life and taking control of what they want to create in their life because their brain's not allowing them. It's just like stuck in that repeating loop where, oh, we're just going to stay right here because this is what we know.
And that's going to go for many years with these people that have that. Do you feel like a lot of that comes from like overexposure to watching the media, being online?
I think it's a lot of things. I definitely think that contributes. I mean,
we got 24/7 news, and I know a lot of people, they're turning the TV on and that's what they're doing. They're watching the news like,
yeah.
Chicken Little, the sky is falling.
Well, and it's ultimately very interesting because I think that no matter where you are on the spectrum with respect to COVID in general, whether you're far on one side and extra fearful about, getting sick or whatnot. Or if you're far on the other side and extra fearful that it's all make believe, it doesn't matter. It's somewhere in the middle. But ultimately, what we consume typically confirms the position we're coming from. And the algorithms and the media know to play into that. And so, we surround ourselves with people who think similarly. And when we like their stuff, we get shown more of that stuff. So then what happens is we end up kind of blind to other perspectives. And I think this happens inside of, religion as well, where we have our perspective and we're surrounded by people who share the same beliefs. And it's not just religion, I guess, even in
Anything.
work culture or friend groups, whatever group we're in, if we continue to surround ourselves with people who think the same, it's going to be really hard to make a shift out of that. So I'd say like one really crucial way to start shifting, if you're like, oh, this isn't really working for me. I'm having these physical symptoms and I'm reacting in ways that don't feel right. Like maybe I'm being really, really irritable, really angry, having outbursts, being triggered by a lot of things. And you think, I kind of wish I could stop that and do better. Like I've had those moments for sure. And I used to have a lot of anxious responses to things. And I'm more of a shut down and avoid kind of, that's my sort of story. But plenty of people are the opposite. They're very reactive. It doesn't matter. But when you're surrounding yourself with people that are keeping you stuck in that loop, that's not going to help you move forward. So when you have that awareness, like, oh yeah, I'm repeating some things. I'm kind of running up on the same stories and the same examples and the same situations over and over. It's like, oh my gosh, like, have I not learned the lesson already? But here we are. Oh, the same kind of relationship. I'm attracting the same kind of human to me again. And here we go. And so when we can start to sort of see things are repeating and we're not really in control of it, we're like, how the hell does this keep happening to me? But if we can start to create some connections with people who think differently, who think more expansively, that aren't inside that circle. If you're having relationship struggles, my gosh, go be friends with someone who has an amazing relationship. Let them mentor you. Let them tell you and show you what's possible instead of wallowing like I did, a lot of times in like, oh, it's misery loves company. Indeed, because it keeps you in that familiar, repeating those loops. And, your brain doesn't have to work as hard. It's really efficient to stay there and not do anything differently. Autopilot. So if you want to shift, start making connections with people. I don't know, get a coach, work with a therapist, find some new friends that have what you want instead of being jealous and comparing and being like, oh, that jerk has everything. And I'm like, go make friends with them, figure out how they got it. Because you know what? Everything ultimately that you desire, and I don't even really think jealousy is a bad thing. Jealousy is actually just your mind's desires, your heart's desires being highlighted for you to be like, yeah, I think that's for me. So the meaning we can attach can be like, yeah, that's for me. I'm going to have that. Or if we don't feel worthy of it or we don't feel capable of having it, then we see it as like jealousy. We're like, oh, I don't like that person. They have what I want and I can't have it. So we just got to shift that and be like, wait a minute, this is coming up and I'm feeling something about this because it's actually something I really want for myself. And we can use that energy to propel us towards that. So comparisonitis, people pleasing, a lot of these beliefs, surrounding ourselves with the same kinds of people and the same kinds of belief systems just doesn't really give us the space to get outside of that box, right? Get outside of that comfort zone and really start to expand. And I think the more we get curious, the more we are open, we open up to greater possibility and, new ways of looking at things. That's when we can really have massive transformation. So we've got to just kind of go there and ask some of those questions at times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like going, how can I reframe this in my mind, And okay, is this angle going to work for me? Is this one going to work for me?
Yeah.
Or this one? No, keep trying, keep trying. 'Cause
And you know what?
we need
Like
to reprogram this.
yeah. And sometimes it's hard to do that on your own, right? So I don't know. I like to think that I'm pretty good at helping people to flip that around, especially when it's not me. And maybe it's because when it's someone else's like kind of bullshit, you're like, "Oh, okay, well, I see what's happening here because I'm really able to come in from the observer perspective. Now, when it's yourself, like there's ego involved and there's this safety mechanism involved. And so for your soul to really get that accurate picture, there's like kind of a lot of shit in the way that you just kind of
Mhm.
need to get cleared away before you can see your own stuff clearly. So, coaches be needing coaches, coaches be needing mentors, therapists, all of these things, just other people in their life in their circle that are encouraging and asking those questions and, you know, throwing out new perspectives because if we're not like staying curious and open and learning, we're not growing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tragedy to see a lot of people just stuck.
Yeah, really stuck and stagnant. And what's really sad to me is when people think they have all of the answers and that there is no change required for themselves. And like what a shame to stop growing at any point in your life. I fully intend to, you know, live to 100 and I'm going to be sassy and curious and asking all the questions and like I can't wait to see what the things that I'm going to discover and learn about myself and about the world and about the people I love and the people I don't know yet, all of those things because I think it's so humans are interesting.
Yeah.
Like I find it all very fascinating. I really enjoy having a conversation. I have no problem taking up a different angle or a different perspective from someone and offering them up. Have you considered it this way? Right? Have you looked at it this way? Because I think what you're telling me is that you have a belief that's really stopping you from having what you want.
Mhm.
So your options are to carry on with that and keep not having what you want. Or maybe we can look at, reframing it, shifting it, flipping it around. Sometimes it's like really hard for people to do that. They can be really resistant. That comfort zone, it feels so cozy in there, and they don't want to break out of the cocoon and have to, oh, it's kind of, unfamiliar and uncertain out there. But when we can push the boundaries a little bit at a time and sort of grow and expand slowly, an example that I use is when I go to the mountains and I go hiking. I have done a few hikes where I'm like, holy shit, like terrified. But the more I do gradual increases in level of that, where I'm pushing myself just a little outside my comfort zone, the next time it feels not that scary because now it's not unfamiliar. So just sort of having those tiny challenges and pushing yourself through, and again, fear and excitement actually feel the same in your body. So figuring out what meaning you're attaching can really be eye-opening to decide whether you're allowing fear to keep you stuck or if it's actually a block and not a direction you're supposed to go. So considering, is this something that's actually going to bring me joy? Is this decision feeling expansive? And is it going to lead to me growing and learning, moving closer to, goals and dreams? Is it taking me closer to the impact that I desire to create? Or is it a door being closed? Or is it something legitimate saying, "Whoa, not right now." Right? And that can be kind of hard to discern at times because energetically, if we're really, I think in school we're not really taught how to process and sit with our emotions. That's something that's underdeveloped in a lot of people. I know it's not something I learned in school. It's something I've had to learn with a boatload of trial and error. Sitting with that discomfort, right? And just being okay with the fact that some days are gonna suck and some days you're just gonna feel like like a sack of crap. It's okay. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It's just range of human nature that we have this full sort of range of emotions, and multiple emotions can be experienced at the same time. So we can be grieving and we can be happy at the same time. We can feel peace and we can feel sadness. We are actually amazing. I think humans are really so amazing. We have so much capacity to have all of these different emotions. The problem is when we start putting stories on it and escalating it into all the meaning and all of the backstory and all of these things, instead of just allowing it to be, to feel it, to process it,
Mm-hmm.
to, acknowledge, maybe naming what it is that you're feeling, so that it actually can just move through you, instead of getting stuck and stagnant where you're, lugging it on in a sack on your back and carrying it along, so that you don't have to face it and deal with it and feel it, because we were taught really at a young age that those big emotions, nobody wants to deal with that, right? It can be difficult when someone else is experiencing that and they don't have the ability to regulate their emotions. So they can be extra triggered by someone feeling emotional, which is why sometimes, you'll have a partner who freaks out and completely like loses it when you start to cry, and they start to, don't cry, don't cry, or, you're too much, that's too much, like just tone it down, you're being too much, you're being too this. That's not at all to do with your emotions, yet we tend to internalize that stuff and think, oh my God, I am too much. Oh my God, that I shouldn't be crying. That is okay. I shouldn't be feeling. And then we talk ourselves out of feeling those emotions instead of just allowing them to move through us. Then we end up stuffing them in the backpack and lugging them around for a really long time. When the truth is, it's just that they didn't know how to handle it. Actually, nothing to do with them. Chances are
Right.
we don't
Exactly.
we don't always have these models of people in our lives that are okay to sit with some of that. And, when you're having a bad day, it's hard to sometimes find a friend who you can say, like, listen, I'm having a real dark day.
And that's part of being authentic. I
Yeah.
mean, not reacting um, outwardly towards anybody in a negative way, and showing up authentic,
Yeah. And I
right?
think too, like, a lot of times we just don't have practice feeling discomfort. So instead of just feeling it, we do everything in our power to avoid it and to just stay comfortable, and that happens all around. And then yet it comes out sideways when we're triggered by something that has nothing to do with that, and all of a sudden we're having responses and reactions that really aren't matching the current scenario, because we've got this story, we've got this emotion stored in our body, we've got the memories that are attached to that past time that we had a similar experience, and we're sort of like projecting all of that into this current situation, assuming what the other person must be meaning. We don't know, we really don't know, but we can go very easily into assuming, they're so mad at me, when really maybe they aren't mad at all, right? So it could just be that, I don't know, maybe they had a bad day. Maybe they're not even in a bad mood at all, but when we approach them like, oh, they're so mad at me, it changes the way we interact with them too. And then it changes the whole scenario. That starting
Mhm.
perception really sets the trajectory and creates the reality based on those past experiences, instead of in this moment what is actually going on. I think we can shift a lot of that by being curious, but
True. Asking questions is always good too,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Especially
Communication.
in relationship, it's crucial. And I think, if we can stop making assumptions and instead start asking questions, and stop expecting the other person to, well, expecting anything really, expecting them to do what we want, or expecting them to know what we want, any kind of expectations, yeah, it's probably not going to pan out. You need to communicate that. And I know that can be really difficult and uncomfortable. And, especially if you've gotten in a pattern of when you communicate, it doesn't go over well. Then your brain's hopping in and being like, don't ask, don't want to be a burden. Don't, you don't want to upset the person. And so we get trapped in these cycles. Been there, done that. So I speak from full past experience. But I also can tell you that if you stay curious, if you start with the most positive assumptions, if you remove expectations and just allow other people to be themselves, fully
Mhm.
human, flawed, perfectly imperfect, because no one's perfect. I know it's not possible to perform your way into it. We're just here, we just exist, and we are ultimately all love. And so when we can approach everyone with compassion, acceptance, and just this recognition that we're all doing the best we can, and we all have this different sort of backstory playing into things, and if we ask the questions, what's really coming up for you, what are you thinking, what do you mean by that, we can really avoid most conflict by just asking a little bit more questions and allowing a little bit more space. But that involves that emotional regulation to provide that safe space for being a bit vulnerable, getting curious, and shifting out of assumption and patterns and reaction.
Exactly. That's it. I mean, that makes my head hurt right there because that's a lot to do.
Yeah, yeah, it's not, it takes some practice for sure. And you know, I think ultimately I sort of have this mission right now to help people that are in that sort of stuck position to make those changes. And when I've worked with clients in the past, or, even just in, helping some friends out when they've been in that sort of position, those that have kind of used those tools have really seen that what they really are seeking is within them, that they come back to their own power. And that can go one way or another because, in my case, when I found me and I discovered how amazing I am as a human, and I'm okay with being, imperfect. I'm okay with
Mhm,
making mistakes. I will own that shit for sure. I actually don't think that there is really such thing as failure. I think there's lessons and then there's successes. And sometimes, it's just how you frame it. So, you know, I recognize I am far from perfect, but I'm okay with that. I'm
mhm,
unapologetically me, flaws and all. And I don't mean that in a way like I don't give a crap what anybody, care. Like I care for people. I genuinely, through
mhm.
that love, I want to express that love to people. But I'm still me, whether other people are okay with that or not. Like my people will find me. And that, again, law of attraction, if we are just fully authentically ourselves, if we're vulnerable, it does require some courage to put your real self out there. But man, if you actually put your real self out there and you find your people and they are like, holy shit, you're awesome, I love you, and I accept you and I see you, even though you're not putting on this front and you're not doing what I want you to do, and I still love and accept you. That is, to me, that is God's love. That is what the vision of that spiritual love is really ultimately all about. It comes back to, acceptance, unconditional love and acceptance, and just, recognizing that we are whole humans and we have lots of things to learn. Oh my gosh, it would be so boring if we were just born perfect and done. What would we do?
We would be you ever seen, Star Trek and the Borg? We would be the Borg.
That'd be so boring. Like, I think it's just it's
I must assimilate.
right.
Resistance is futile.
Oh, that is probably a message much needed, that is not the way to live this life, right? Get out of those fear responses because man, there is a great world out there full of love and joy and peace. And
Mm,
you're the one ultimately at the end of the day. I know this would be triggering as hell for some people, but if you're not experiencing it, is you in your own way. And I know that's hard to hear, and I realize that some people will be like, "Oh, whatever. You don't know my situation."
I own that shit, okay?
Right? But, sometimes we kind of need to be triggered, and at times I'm actually okay with sort of triggering people to be like, "What the hell does she know?" Because I know sooner or later they're gonna put it together and they're gonna realize that, not that I was right, but that there is some truth in that. And ultimately, it's up to us, right? It's not about waiting for something or someone else to come along and save us. It's about us reaching inside and doing for ourselves first.
Well, there's a reason why most of us have been single births, you know. Not all of us are multiple births. So there's a reason why we have a birth, and there's a reason why we have our own death.
Yeah.
Because everything in between is ours too.
Yeah.
So,
and it's all ultimately working out for our highest good. I really do believe that, everything does end up for our highest good at the end of the day, even though, yes, we experience plenty of really shitty circumstances in life. That is the way it is. But we are not designed to stay in that suffering. We are not designed to take that on and create a new identity of suffering around it. We are ultimately designed for that love and that joy and that peace to come up, for us to experience things and then just move on with that love and that joy and that peace at the forefront, so that we don't continue reliving that suffering over and over and over until we die. That's no existence. And that's not what, ultimately God or the universe would want for all of us, which are connected to him in us, God in us, universe in us, spirit in us, however you want to phrase it, all that universal energy. Ultimately, we're just on a journey.
Yeah. And hopefully we get that unconditional love while we're here. And the happiness coach, Christy Holt, can help you find that.
Yeah. I'm on a mission. And, with my podcast, the whole vision with that is just to share stories that, other people's experiences. It's really all about women, for women. Anyone who identifies with or loves women might find it interesting to think about. And you know what, like men who love women too and want to support, the women in their lives would find some of the topics really beneficial. Like, we're tackling things like good girl idea. We're tackling limiting beliefs from all sorts of perspectives. We're tackling people pleasing, because my God, are we not conditioned to be the people pleasers and the nurturers and the caregivers at all costs to ourselves right from damn near birth? We're talking about money and wealth and,
Sex.
Sex. Absolutely. We're talking about stuff. We're talking about spirituality. We're talking about, shooting on ourselves and living up to expectations. We're talking about imposter syndrome. We're talking about so many different sort of aspects of things that people are experiencing every single day, and how people are overcoming these things to, ultimately create the happy life, relationship, and business, whatever that looks like, change the world, make a difference. And those stories are like so inspiring. And you're going to have, amazing tips that are really empowering, some simple ideas of, how you can regulate your nervous system, how you can tap into your intuition, how you can reframe different thoughts and beliefs. It's just going to get you questioning, what do I believe and where did that come from? And do I still want to take that forth, or maybe it's worth a reframe? So
I love it.
It's amazing. And I think it's just so much fun. I love having conversations. So it's just great.
You don't just do this podcast. I mean, that's you right now. You're like in that energy, but you also you're coaching, you're doing fitness courses
Yeah, I do teach some fitness online. That's sort of like, almost like remnant of that health coaching phase. And honestly, I kind of teach the fitness classes online ultimately so that I force my ass to do 3 workouts a week and lift some weights. I'm not super focused necessarily on growing that at the moment. I'm just kind of in that routine, doing the thing. It does make me show up. So there is that, keeps me in shape for all those hikes that I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But the coaching, yeah, I'm like really on a mission to help some women make that decision in their relationship. If they're unhappy, I want to help them to figure out who they are and what they want, to find their voice, to regulate their nervous system so that they can face and embrace that uncertainty that's lying in between them and their happy life, and just bust through it, make a decision, and give them a really safe space to explore what that might look like so they can really unpack it and move forward.
And do you work with men too?
I'm not opposed to working with men. I generally tend to work with a lot of women, but I'm absolutely not opposed to working with men. If they're vibing, it's all good.
And you do this online, and
Yeah.
people can find you. How can they find you?
Well, you can find my podcast at createyourhappy.ca. That's the podcast website. And you can find me on Facebook, is usually where I hang out most. And actually, if you go to coachchristyholt.com, that takes you right to my Facebook profile. Add me up. I love connecting with new people. I would love to, give you some inspiring content to just make you think differently. I would love to connect if there's something that's, standing out and you'd like to take a step and make some shifts in your life. I would love to chat about what that might look like. Otherwise, yeah, I would just love to connect. Do send me a message, though. I have a boatload of friend requests that I'm not the best at going through. So please send me a friend request and a message, and just say that you saw me on the show here so that I can piece it together and I'll know that you're not a bot.
Okay. Fantastic. And I will also, and this is also included in the description of the audio and the video. So
Awesome.
you can also find her through there. I've provided links there to most everything except your website. So
Yeah, createyourhappy.ca. I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on TikTok. If you go to my website, all of the other links are also at the top of my website in the banner. So if there's another website that we didn't include, you can find me through the website too.
okay. Thank you so much for being here. And wow, I think I need to go back and watch this again because I have to breathe now.
So good. We really jam-packed it full of good, juicy stuff.
It really did. You really did. Thank you. And I want to thank our viewers, our future viewers, and future listeners for tuning in. And thank you and good night. Awesome.